Instructor Rethavan had trained soldiers for 4 centuries, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could produce. His office walls displayed commendations from 17 different worlds, and his kill count record stood at 2,347 confirmed eliminations during the border wars. Now he served as a combat instructor at the Unified Galactic Defense Academy on Epsilon 7, teaching young recruits how to survive their first firefight. The morning roster arrived on his data pad, and he scanned through the names with practiced efficiency. Quilarians, Praxians, Volther, Kandari, all familiar species with predictable capabilities. Then he stopped. 3 human names sat at the bottom of the list. David Reed, Amy Foster, Robert Cross. Humans, the new species. Only 15 years since first contact. Barely enough time to understand their culture, and now they were sending recruits to the most demanding military academy in the Coalition. Rethavan had heard stories about Earth during the initial surveys. A Class 12 death world, they called it. Extreme weather, aggressive predators, diseases that could kill in hours. Yet the humans who visited other worlds seemed soft, always talking about peace and cooperation. Other instructors had already started the jokes. In the dining hall that evening, Instructor Harvis from the Talaron unit slapped Rethavan on the shoulder with one of his 4 arms. "I heard you got stuck with the humans. My condolences. They will probably cry when they see a practice weapon." Rethavan said nothing. He had learned long ago that assumptions got soldiers killed. Instead, he reviewed what little information existed about human military capability. The data was sparse. Humans had no major conflicts in the past 100 years. No galactic war experience. Their weapons technology was adequate but not exceptional. On paper, they seemed average at best. The next morning, he met his new class in the training yard. 42 recruits stood in neat rows representing 12 different species. The 3 humans were easy to spot. They stood together near the back, smaller than the Talaron shock troopers, less armored than the Quilarian defenders, lacking the natural weapons of the Volthyr. David was tall and lean. Amy was shorter with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Robert was built thick, with scars on his hands that suggested manual labor. "I am Instructor Rethavan," he began, his translator converting his words into each species' native language. "For the next 6 months, I will teach you how to kill the enemy before the enemy kills you. Some of you will fail. Some of you will quit. Some of you will die during training exercises. These are acceptable outcomes. What is not acceptable is weakness on a real battlefield." He walked between the rows, examining each recruit. Most met his gaze briefly, then looked away, showing proper military deference. When he reached the humans, all 3 looked directly at him and held his stare. Not aggressive, but not submissive either. "Interesting. We begin with a simple endurance run," Rethavan announced. 15 kilometers across varied terrain. Full combat gear. Anyone who falls more than 500 meters behind the lead runner fails this exercise and returns to remedial training. The recruits groaned quietly. 15 kilometers was standard, but in full gear it would test the limits of most species. Rethavan watched as they suited up, noting how each species approached the task. The Talaron were confident, naturally strong and fast. The Quilarians were methodical, checking every strap and buckle. The humans simply put on their gear and waited. He fired the starting signal and the group surged forward. As expected, the Talaron took the lead immediately, their long legs eating up distance. The Quilarians settled into a steady pace. The smaller species struggled with the weight but kept moving. At the 5-kilometer mark, the pattern held. Talaron in front, everyone else strung out behind. The 3 humans ran together, staying in the middle of the pack. Nothing remarkable. At 10 kilometers, recruits started falling back. A Kandari stumbled and caught himself. 2 Volthyr were breathing hard, their respiratory systems struggling. The Talaron still led, but their pace had slowed. The humans maintained the same steady rhythm they had started with. At 12 kilometers, reality shifted. A Talaron fell back, his leg muscles cramping. Another slowed to a walk. The lead Talaron runner glanced back, saw his unit mate struggling, and pushed harder to maintain honor. But his pace was clearly suffering. The humans moved up through the pack, not sprinting, not showing off, just maintaining their original pace while everyone else slowed down. Rethavan, monitoring from his aerial platform, noted this with interest. They were not fast, but they were consistent. At 14 kilometers, only 6 recruits remained in the lead group. 3 Talaron and 3 humans. The Talaron were gasping, their faces showing strain. The humans were sweating heavily, but their breathing remained controlled. One of them, David, was talking to the others. Rethvan enhanced the audio. Almost there. Keep the pace steady. Don't sprint yet. Yet? Rethvan thought. They could go faster. The final kilometer began. The lead Talaron, determined to show dominance, attempted a sprint. He lasted 200 meters before his legs gave out and he collapsed to his knees. The other two Talaron pushed hard but crossed the finish line stumbling and immediately sat down. The humans finished 15 seconds later, still running at the same pace. They crossed the line and David looked at his companions. Cool down jog? They jogged another half kilometer, while the medical team attended to the collapsed Talaron. When the humans finally stopped, they were breathing hard but still standing, still alert, still ready. Over the next hour, the remaining recruits trickled in. 16 failed to finish within the acceptable time limit. The 3 Talaron who finished first were still recovering, lying on medical beds with muscle fatigue. The humans were stretching and drinking water, looking ready to go again. That evening, Rethvan reviewed the biological data from the run. The Talaron had performed as expected, using their superior fast twitch muscles for speed and strength. But they paid for it with rapid fatigue. Most species followed similar patterns. Quick bursts, then rest. The human data was different. Their heart rates had elevated quickly and stayed elevated, but never spiked into dangerous territory. Their muscle efficiency was lower than Talaron, but their recovery rate was extraordinary. And their sweat. They produced massive amounts of liquid to cool themselves, an adaptation Rethvan had never seen so pronounced in any species. He pulled up Earth's evolutionary history. Humans were pursuit predators. They hunted by chasing prey across vast distances until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. It was not about being fastest. It was about never stopping. A message appeared on his screen from Instructor Harvis. How did your soft humans perform today? Rethvan considered his response carefully. The humans had not won the run. They had not even finished first. But they had outlasted species much stronger than themselves, and the way David had said, "Don't sprint yet," suggested they had been holding back. He typed back, "They performed adequately." But in his private log, accessible only to senior command, he wrote something different. Human endurance exceeds all established coalition species baselines. They do not tire the same way others do. Recommend further observation before final assessment. He looked at the schedule for next week. Live fire exercises in simulated combat zones. That would reveal the truth about human capability. Endurance was useful, but warfare required aggression, tactics, and the will to kill. Rethvan had trained thousands of soldiers. He knew the difference between those who could kill and those who would hesitate. The humans seemed pleasant enough, always polite, often smiling. But there was something behind those smiles that he could not quite identify. Tomorrow they would begin weapons training. Then he would see what humans were truly made of. The weapons range smelled like ozone and burnt metal, familiar scents that Rethvan associated with proper military training. He had spent the previous night researching Earth, and what he found disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. The planet was a nightmare of evolutionary pressure. Predators everywhere, weather patterns that could kill unprepared travelers in hours, diseases that jumped between species. Yet humans thrived there, spreading across every continent, adapting to every environment. David, Amy, and Robert approached the firing line with the rest of the recruits. Today would test their weapon handling, target acquisition, and most importantly, their willingness to pull the trigger. Many species struggled with that final step. Evolution as prey animals made them hesitant to attack, even in simulation. Select your weapon, Rethvan instructed, gesturing to the rack of standard coalition plasma rifles. Each weapon was calibrated for the recruit's training level. Powerful enough to simulate real combat, but set to non-lethal training mode. The Talaron grabbed the largest rifles, their natural strength allowing them to handle heavier weapons. The Quillarians chose mid-range assault weapons with good accuracy. The Volthir selected light submachine guns that matched their quick reflexes. The humans studied the options carefully, and Robert picked up several weapons, testing their weight and balance before making a choice. These are all the same basic platform, Robert said to his companions. Different sizes, same firing mechanism, Amy nodded. Standard issue military doctrine. Makes training easier. reduces logistics complexity. They spoke as if analyzing the coalition's entire weapons philosophy from a few rifles. Rethavan found himself moving closer to hear better. David chose a mid-weight rifle with a long barrel. Better range. If we can hit them from farther away, they cannot hit us. The others agreed and selected similar weapons. Practical thinking. Not flashy, not emotional, just practical. The course is simple, Rethavan explained. Targets will appear at various distances. You will have 30 seconds to engage as many as possible. Accuracy matters more than speed. A miss wastes ammunition and time. The first recruit, a Talaron named Horvath, stepped up. He was strong and confident, having won the physical combat trials earlier in the week. The buzzer sounded. Targets popped up at 50, 100, and 150 meters. Horvath fired rapidly, his shots connecting with most targets. His score appeared on the board. 72% accuracy. Respectable for a first attempt. Other recruits followed with similar results. The Quillarians scored higher on accuracy but lower on speed. The Volthir were fast but scattered in their aim. Standard performance curves that Rethavan had seen thousands of times. David stepped to the line. He settled into a stance that looked different from what Rethavan taught. Lower, more compact, weight forward. The buzzer sounded. David did not fire immediately. He took a breath, acquired his first target, and fired once. The target registered a hit. He moved smoothly to the next target, fired once, moved again. Each shot deliberate. Each shot a hit, his score appeared. 94% accuracy. The range went quiet. Luck, someone muttered. Amy went next. Same stance, same methodical approach. 91% accuracy. Robert stepped up, and Rethavan noticed something different. The big human's breathing changed. Slower, deeper. When the buzzer sounded, Robert moved even more deliberately than the others. He fired 9 shots, 9 hits. But what struck Rethavan was the time between shots. Exactly the same each time. Like a machine. Where did you learn to shoot? Rethavan asked when the exercise finished. David shrugged. My father taught me when I was 8 years old. We hunted for food sometimes. Hunted? Rethavan's translator struggled with the word, offering several meanings. You killed animals for sustenance? Yes, sir. Deer mostly, some elk. You have to make the first shot count or you will be tracking a wounded animal for hours. 8 years old. Humans gave weapons to their children. Rethavan filed that information away for his report. The next exercise was more complex. A simulated urban environment where targets would appear from multiple angles, some hostile, some neutral civilians. This tested decision-making under pressure. Shooting was easy. Knowing when to shoot was harder. The recruits moved through the course one at a time. Most did well, though several accidentally shot civilian targets in their panic. The Talaron tended to shoot everything that moved. The Quillarians were too cautious, hesitating until hostile targets fired first. The humans went last. David entered the simulation, and Rethavan watched through the monitor feed. The human moved differently than others. He did not rush into rooms. He paused at corners, checked angles, moved with his weapon always ready. When a hostile target appeared, David fired instantly. When a civilian target appeared, his weapon tracked it for a moment, then moved on. How did you know which targets to engage? Rethavan asked afterward. Body language, David replied. The hostile targets moved aggressively. The civilians moved defensively. Different posture, different intent. You determined this in less than a second? Yes, sir. Humans are very good at reading body language. It is a survival trait. Over the following weeks, training intensified. Hand-to-hand combat revealed more surprises. The humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but they were relentless. When sparring with Talaron opponents who outweighed them by 50 kilograms, the humans absorbed punishment and kept fighting. Robert took a hit that would have knocked most species unconscious. His head snapped back, blood ran from his nose, and he smiled. Good hit, he said, then swept the Talaron's legs and put him in a chokehold. The medical officer, a Quillarian named Sethris, pulled Rethavan aside after that session. The human pain response is abnormal. They register damage but do not stop fighting. I have never seen this in any other species. Is it a medical condition? Rethavan asked. No, it is evolutionary. On Earth, stopping when injured meant death, so they evolved to keep fighting through damage that would incapacitate others. That night, Rethavan expanded his research. He found something called the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 human soldiers held a mountain pass against hundreds of thousands of enemies. They fought for 3 days and died to the last man rather than retreat. He found stories of human soldiers in their own wars who continued fighting with injuries that should have killed them. One human had fought for hours after being shot multiple times, keeping his companions alive. There was a pattern in all of Earth's military history. Humans did not just fight to win. They fought to destroy the threat completely. Every war in their past had ended with total victory or total defeat. No species in the coalition fought that way. War was about achieving political objectives, not annihilation. The next major exercise was a 72-hour survival course. Each recruit would be dropped alone in hostile wilderness and had to reach the extraction point without being caught by hunter drones. Food and water were available in the environment, but recruits had to find them. Most species struggled because the course was designed to exhaust participants mentally and physically. The Talaron performed well for the first day, then crashed hard when their fast-burning metabolism depleted their energy. The Quilarians rationed carefully but moved slowly. The Volthir were too small to handle the rough terrain. The humans treated it like a vacation. David built shelter using natural materials. Amy identified edible plants with confidence that suggested she had done this before. Robert caught fish from a stream using a trap he made from branches. They all reached the extraction point 12 hours early and looked disappointed it was over. That was the most difficult survival course in coalition training, Rethvan told them. Amy looked confused. Sir, this environment is actually quite mild. The temperature barely drops at night. There are no large predators. The water is clean. This would be considered an easy camping trip on Earth. Camping. Recreational outdoor survival. Humans do it for fun. For fun. Rethvan added that to his growing file of concerning human behaviors. The final revelation came during a night exercise. The recruits had to navigate through dark terrain using only their species' natural senses. Most species had some night vision capability, but the course was designed to be challenging for everyone. The humans completed it faster than anyone else. How? Rethvan demanded. Your night vision is inferior to most species here, David explained patiently. We use different cues. Sound, smell, spatial memory. Humans hunted at dawn and dusk on Earth when light was poor. We learned to track prey without seeing it clearly. That evening, Rethvan compiled his observations into a preliminary report. Human physical capabilities were average or slightly above average, but their mental approach to combat was unprecedented. They thought like predators. They planned like strategists. They endured like machines. Most concerning was their attitude toward violence. Other species in the coalition treated combat as a necessary evil, something to be avoided when possible, executed reluctantly when required. Humans treated it as problem-solving. They did not enjoy killing, but they did not hesitate either. It was simply a tool they used when needed. The Academy commander reviewed his report and sent back a single question. Do you recommend these humans for combat deployment? Rethvan stared at the question for a long time. The honest answer was that humans were already more effective than many veteran soldiers he had trained, but recommending them for combat felt like unleashing something dangerous. He typed his response. Recommend further evaluation under battlefield conditions. Request permission to deploy humans in upcoming wargame exercise against Talaron shock troops. The commander approved immediately. In 2 weeks, Rethvan's mixed unit would face an elite Talaron team in a realistic combat simulation. The Talaron were considered the finest warriors in the coalition. They expected an easy victory against recruits. Rethvan watched the 3 humans training together, moving through combat drills with casual efficiency. They were teaching the other recruits tactics, sharing knowledge freely. But when they thought no one was watching, Rethvan saw something else. They practiced different techniques. Faster, more aggressive, more lethal. They were holding back during regular training. They had been holding back the entire time. Whatever happened in the war game, Rethvan knew one thing for certain. The galaxy's understanding of human capability was about to change forever. Rethvan had witnessed many war games over his centuries of service, but none generated the level of interest this one attracted. Word had spread through the Academy that 3 human recruits would be facing an elite Talaron shock unit. Senior instructors arrived to observe. Tactical analysts set up monitoring stations. Even the Academy commander decided to watch personally. Commander Veltris of the Talaron unit did not hide his amusement. He had brought 30 of his finest soldiers, each with at least 20 years of combat experience. They had fought in the border wars, suppressed rebellions on 3 different worlds, and maintained a perfect record in training exercises. Facing recruits should have been beneath them, but Veltris saw it as an opportunity to put the humans in their place. "This will be educational for your students," Veltris told Rethvan before the exercise began. "They will learn what real soldiers look like." Rethvan said nothing. He had learned to keep his concerns private. The exercise zone covered 50 square kilometers of varied terrain: forest, hills, open ground, and a few abandoned structures. The objective was simple. Each team had a flag at their base camp. First team to capture the opponent's flag won. Weapons were set to training mode, delivering an electric shock instead of actual damage. 3 shocks and a soldier was considered eliminated. Rethvan's unit consisted of 30 recruits: David, Amy, and Robert. 15 other recruits from various species who had shown promise. The rest were average soldiers still learning basic tactics. Against Veltris and his veterans, standard doctrine predicted a massacre. The teams deployed to opposite sides of the zone. Rethvan monitored from the command center, watching multiple camera feeds and tracking transponders that showed each soldier's position. Academy observers crowded around, eager to see how quickly the recruits would fold. The exercise began at dawn. Veltris immediately sent scouts forward in a standard formation, 3-point advance with covering fire positions. His remaining forces established a defensive perimeter around their flag. Textbook military doctrine refined over thousands of years of coalition warfare. Rethvan's recruits moved more cautiously. The bulk of his force stayed near their own flag, taking defensive positions. But the 3 humans disappeared into the forest immediately, moving fast and low. "Where are your humans going?" Commander Veltris asked over the communication channel. "They are abandoning their unit." "They requested independent operation," Rethvan replied carefully. "Foolish. They will be eliminated first." The Talaron scouts advanced steadily, communicating efficiently, covering each other's movements. They spotted Rethvan's defensive positions and radioed back coordinates. Within 15 minutes, the Talaron launched their assault. Plasma fire lit up the morning as Veltris's veterans attacked the recruit position with overwhelming force. The recruits fought back desperately but stood no chance. Their defensive line collapsed within minutes. 15 recruits were eliminated in the opening assault. The survivors scattered into the forest, disorganized and panicked. The observers murmured. The exercise appeared to be going exactly as predicted. Veltris regrouped his forces and began a methodical advance toward Rethvan's flag position. His soldiers moved in coordinated teams, covering all angles, professional and efficient. They reached the flag location 20 minutes into the exercise and claimed it easily. "Exercise over," Veltris announced. "Total victory in 22 minutes. Perhaps next time give your recruits more training before wasting everyone's time." "Exercise is not over," Rethvan said quietly. "Your flag has not been secured." Veltris checked his tactical display and laughed. "My flag has 20 soldiers guarding it. Your force is eliminated or scattered. How do you expect to capture it?" "I do not know," Rethvan admitted. "But I suggest you check your rear guard." Veltris's expression changed. He switched camera feeds to his base camp. Everything appeared normal. 20 soldiers in defensive positions, weapons ready, the flag secure. Then one of his soldiers collapsed. Then another. The remaining Talaron spun around, weapons raised, but saw nothing. A third soldier went down. A fourth. "What is happening?" Veltris demanded. "Report." His soldiers were shouting over the comms, confused and alarmed. They fired into the forest at shadows. More soldiers collapsed, hit from angles they could not identify. In less than 2 minutes, half of Veltris's rear guard was eliminated. Then the humans appeared. They materialized from the undergrowth like ghosts, moving fast and low. David hit 2 soldiers before they could react. Amy eliminated 3 more with precise shots. Robert crashed through a defensive position like a battering ram, his weapon firing at point-blank range. The remaining Talaron tried to form a defensive circle, but the humans gave them no time. They moved constantly, never staying in one position, attacking from different angles. It was not the organized warfare that the coalition taught. It was something older, something primal. Within 5 minutes, Veltris's entire rear guard was eliminated. David grabbed the flag and all 3 humans disappeared back into the forest. "Impossible," Veltris breathed. 20 veterans eliminated by 3 recruits? The observers were silent, studying the replay footage. The humans had approached the Talaron base from downwind, moving slowly and silently. They had waited perfectly still, while the Talaron guards looked right past them. Then they had attacked with such speed and aggression that the Talaron never recovered from the shock. "Bring back our main force," Veltris ordered. "Hunt them down." The war game transformed into something different. Veltris pulled all his remaining soldiers back, abandoning their captured flag to pursue the humans. 10 elite Talaron warriors tracking 3 recruits through dense forest. The humans split up. David went north, Amy went east, Robert went west. The Talaron split their forces to follow, confident they could run down individual targets. They were wrong. David led his pursuers on a winding path through the roughest terrain, over rocks and through streams. The Talaron were faster initially, but David maintained a steady pace. After an hour, the Talaron started to tire. After 2 hours, they were exhausted. David circled back and eliminated them one by one while they rested. Amy used different tactics. She led her pursuers into a marshy area and then went completely silent. The Talaron searched for her frantically, but she had buried herself in mud with only her eyes and weapon exposed. When they passed close enough, she eliminated 3 before they knew where the shots came from. Robert did not run at all. He found a defensive position with good cover and waited. When his pursuers arrived, he held them off in a firefight that lasted 3 hours. The Talaron could not advance because Robert's position was too strong. They could not retreat, because that meant failure. Eventually, their ammunition ran low and Robert pushed out to eliminate them in close combat. Back at the command center, the observers watched in stunned silence. By midday, Veltris had only 8 soldiers left. The humans were still active, still hunting. The exercise had been expected to last an hour. Now it was approaching 6 hours. "Recall all forces," the Academy commander ordered. "This has become a massacre." "No," Veltris said firmly. "We will complete this exercise." His remaining soldiers linked up and moved as a single unit. No more splitting forces, no more pursuit. They would secure both flags and end this humiliation. But they had to sleep eventually. Talaron required 6 hours of rest every 24 hours. It was biological necessity. By evening, Veltris's soldiers were showing signs of exhaustion. They established a night camp with rotating guards. The humans did not sleep. They rested in shifts, one always awake and alert. At midnight, they attacked the Talaron camp. Not a direct assault. They fired a few shots and disappeared. The Talaron guards raised the alarm and the entire unit scrambled to defensive positions. An hour passed. Nothing happened. The Talaron relaxed slightly. Then it happened again. A few shots, then nothing. Another alarm. Another scramble. This repeated through the night. Every hour, the humans harassed the Talaron camp, giving them no rest. By dawn, Veltris's soldiers were beyond exhausted. They moved sluggishly, their reaction slow. That was when the humans struck. Not just the 3 anymore. They had rallied some of the scattered recruits, the ones who had not been eliminated in the initial assault. A dozen soldiers hit the exhausted Talaron from 3 sides. The battle was brief and brutal. The Talaron fought well, but exhaustion destroyed their coordination. Within 10 minutes, Veltris's entire force was eliminated. David planted his flag at the Talaron base camp. The exercise officially ended 31 hours after it began. Rethvan's unit had won. The command center was absolutely silent. Observers stared at the final statistics. 30 elite Talaron veterans eliminated. 3 human recruits responsible for 23 of those eliminations personally. Veltris requested the footage be sealed. "This cannot be made public," he said, his pride clearly wounded. "My soldiers were tired, the terrain favored the defenders, the recruits used unconventional tactics." Unconventional? The Academy commander studied the replay. They used persistence hunting tactics. They split up to divide forces. They denied the enemy rest. These are not random choices. This is a coherent tactical philosophy. Rethvan spoke carefully. On Earth, this is called guerrilla warfare. Humans developed it fighting each other. Small forces defeating larger armies through mobility, endurance, and psychological pressure. Why was this not in their military file? Someone demanded. Because humans have thousands of different military tactics. Their history is full of warfare. This is only one approach. The observers began talking at once, voices rising. Some demanded humans be restricted from combat roles. Others argued humans should be fast-tracked to elite units. The Academy commander called for silence. Instructor Rethavan, you will compile a complete report on human combat capabilities. I want every tactical doctrine they possess documented, every psychological trait analyzed, every biological advantage noted. Yes, Commander. That evening, Rethavan found the three humans sitting together, drinking water and talking quietly. They looked tired but satisfied. You held back during the exercise, Rethavan said. David looked up. Sir, you eliminated enemies efficiently, but you did not maximize casualties. You could have killed Veltrus's entire force in the first hour if you had been truly aggressive. The three humans exchanged glances. Finally, Amy spoke. We are trying to fit in, sir. Humans have a reputation problem. If we show everything we are capable of, it frightens people. What are you capable of? Robert answered. On Earth, humans are not the fastest or strongest predator, but we are the most persistent. When we hunt something, we do not stop until it is dead or we are. Every predator on Earth fears humans because they know we will never give up. The Talaron are afraid of you now, Rethavan observed. We know, David said quietly. That is what concerns us. We came to join the coalition to make friends, not enemies. But our biology and history make us very good at warfare. We cannot change what we are. Rethavan sat down beside them. The galaxy needs to understand what humans are. Not to fear you, but to respect you. I will write my report honestly. What happens after that is not my decision. The three humans nodded. They understood. The war game had changed everything. Humanity's place in the coalition military was no longer a question. The only question was how the galaxy would react to having pursuit predators among them. That night, Rethavan began writing his report. He titled it simply, Assessment of Human Combat Effectiveness. It would become the most important document he ever produced. And it would change galactic military doctrine forever. The database contained 30,000 years of recorded military history from 47 coalition species. Rethavan had spent 3 weeks reviewing all of it, comparing battle records, tactical innovations, strategic doctrines. He needed context before he could properly analyze what made humans different. What he discovered disturbed him deeply. The Quillarians had fought 3 major wars in their entire history before joining the coalition. The Talaron had 5. The Volthir, the most aggressive species in the coalition, had engaged in 12 significant conflicts over 20,000 years. These numbers were typical. Most species developed warfare slowly, reluctantly, treating it as an unfortunate necessity when diplomacy failed. Then Rethavan accessed Earth's military database. The data was overwhelming. Thousands of wars, tens of thousands of battles, conflicts that lasted days, conflicts that lasted decades, wars over resources, territory, religion, ideology, and reasons the translator struggled to explain. Humans fought each other constantly, developing and refining military tactics through endless practical application. But the raw numbers were not the most disturbing part. It was the nature of the conflicts. Coalition wars typically ended when one side achieved a political objective, or both sides reached a negotiated settlement. Human wars often ended in total destruction of the enemy, complete occupation, unconditional surrender, terms that made other coalition species uncomfortable. Rethavan found a conflict called World War II. 56 million human casualties. Cities destroyed by weapons so powerful they had not been used since. The war ended only when one side was completely defeated, their leadership dead or captured, their military dissolved. Then, remarkably, the victors helped rebuild the defeated nations. This pattern repeated throughout human history. Vicious warfare followed by reconstruction and integration. Enemies became allies. Former battlefields became peaceful borders. It was as if humans needed war to establish relationships, then maintained peace until they needed war again. He requested an interview with Amy to understand better. They met in a quiet office away from the training grounds. She looked nervous, knowing the purpose of this conversation. I am trying to understand human military culture, Rethavan began. Why do humans fight so often? Amy considered the question carefully. We are tribal by nature. Our evolution programmed us to defend our group against other groups. For most of our history, resources were scarce. Fighting over territory and food was necessary for survival. But humans have had abundant resources for centuries. Why continue fighting? Because we found new reasons. Religion, political systems, ideological differences. Humans are very good at identifying what makes us different from others, then using that as justification for conflict. Rethavan pulled up a specific battle record. The Battle of Stalingrad. 1 million casualties in a single city. Both sides refused to retreat. Why? Amy studied the data and her expression grew sad. Pride, ideology, and strategic importance. Also, humans have a psychological trait called escalation of commitment. Once we invest heavily in something, we find it very difficult to abandon, even when continuing is irrational. Many coalition species would call that insane. They would be partially correct. Human military thinking often defies pure logic. We value concepts like honor, courage, and sacrifice. We build monuments to soldiers who died in losing battles. We tell stories about last stands and heroic defeats. These things motivate us in ways that are not strictly rational. Rethavan accessed another file. Humans maintained military forces even during long periods of peace. Why? Because peace is temporary. Every human culture understands this instinctively. We prepare for war during peace because we know war will come eventually. There is an old Earth saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. That suggests humans expect war. We do, not because we want it, but because our history has taught us that conflict is inevitable. Hoping for peace while preparing for war is considered wise. Hoping for peace without preparation is considered naive. Over the next few days, Rethavan interviewed David and Robert, gathering similar insights. Each human offered a slightly different perspective, but certain themes remained constant. Humans saw warfare as a natural part of existence. They did not celebrate it, but they did not shy from it either. And most importantly, they had spent thousands of years perfecting it. The coalition had unified military doctrine developed through careful study and theoretical analysis. Humans had dozens of military doctrines developed through trial, error, and rivers of blood. They knew what worked because they had tested everything in actual combat. Rethavan compiled a list of human tactical innovations: guerrilla warfare, combined arms tactics, strategic bombing, amphibious assault, airborne operations, night fighting, urban combat, siege warfare, naval tactics, psychological operations. The list went on for pages. Each doctrine had been developed during specific conflicts, refined over time, and passed down through military institutions that existed for thousands of years. Earth had military academies older than some coalition species. They had war colleges dedicated solely to studying how to fight better. But doctrine and tactics were only part of the picture. Rethavan needed to understand the psychological component. Why were humans so effective in actual combat? He found his answer in Earth's warrior cultures. Humans romanticized soldiers. They created myths and legends around military figures. They taught children about famous battles. They built memorials to war dead. They offered special status and benefits to veterans. Most coalition species treated soldiers as unfortunate necessities. Humans treated them as heroes. This cultural programming had profound effects. Young humans grew up hearing stories about courage under fire, sacrifice for comrades, and victory against impossible odds. By the time they reached military age, warfare was not some foreign concept. It was something their heroes did. Rethavan studied the files on David, Amy, and Robert more carefully. David's grandfather had fought in the unification wars on Earth. His father served in the Planetary Defense Force. Military service was a family tradition spanning generations. Amy came from a region on Earth where mandatory military service was required for all citizens. She had completed basic training at age 18, years before joining the Coalition Academy. The skills she demonstrated were not natural talent. They were trained responses drilled through repetition. Robert's background was different. He came from a civilian family with no military tradition, but he had grown up hunting, camping, and learning survival skills as recreation. The things he found relaxing, most coalition species would consider extreme survival training. All three humans were average by Earth standards. They were not elite special forces operators. They were not career military professionals. They were simply humans who had decided to join the galactic military. And they were this effective. Rethavan tried to imagine what Earth's actual elite soldiers would be capable of. The special forces, the units that trained beyond standard military requirements, the operators who specialized in the most dangerous missions. The thought terrified him. He drafted a section of his report titled, Human Military Capability Assessment. In it, he noted that the 3 humans at the Academy represented baseline capability, not exceptional talent. Earth maintained military forces numbering in the tens of millions, with extensive training systems producing soldiers at a continuous rate. If conflict ever required full human military deployment, the Coalition would gain access to the most effective fighting force in known galactic history. The question was whether other species would accept that. A message arrived from Academy Command, requesting his presence at a classified briefing. When he arrived, he found senior military officials from 6 different species waiting. They looked concerned. "Your preliminary findings have caused significant political discussion," the Academy commander began. "Some species are questioning whether humans should be allowed in military service at all." "On what grounds?" Rethavan asked. "They are too effective. Their cultural acceptance of warfare is seen as dangerous. There are concerns about humans potentially dominating Coalition military leadership," a Praxian official spoke up. "We have maintained peace in the Coalition for 3 centuries precisely because no single species can dominate militarily. Humans threaten that balance." Rethavan chose his words carefully. "Humans do not want to dominate. They want to serve. But you cannot ask them to serve while simultaneously demanding they be less effective. That is illogical." "Perhaps humans should be limited to defensive roles," another official suggested. "Keep them away from offensive operations. That would be a waste of their capability and humans would find it insulting. They joined the Coalition as equals, not as second-class citizens." The discussion continued for hours. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Humans would be allowed to continue military service, but their deployment would be carefully monitored. Rethavan would complete his full assessment, and based on that, new protocols would be developed. As the officials filed out, the Academy commander pulled Rethavan aside. "You have spent more time studying humans than anyone else in the Coalition. Personal opinion, are they dangerous?" Rethavan thought about the 3 humans, how they laughed together during meals, how they helped struggling recruits without being asked, how Robert had cried when reading a message from his mother. They were not monsters. They were not warmongers. "They are dangerous the way a predator is dangerous," Rethavan finally said. "Not malicious, but highly capable. If you treat them as threats, they will respond as enemies. If you treat them as allies, they will die protecting you. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. The question is what we do with that danger. And what should we do? Use it. The Coalition has enemies. We have border conflicts with hostile species. We have pirates raiding trade routes. We have problems that military force must solve. Humans excel at solving problems with military force. Why would we reject that capability?" The commander nodded slowly. "Complete your report. Make it thorough. Whatever decision is made will rest on your assessment." Rethavan returned to his office and looked at the incomplete report. He had documented human physical capabilities, tactical knowledge, and cultural programming. But he was missing something important. He needed to see humans in actual combat, not simulation. He needed to observe them when lives were truly at stake. He submitted a request to Coalition Command. Deploy the 3 humans to an active combat zone. Send Rethavan as an observer. Test human capability under real battlefield conditions. The request was approved within hours. Apparently, he was not the only one who wanted answers. The Coalition was at war with the Hive Collective on the border worlds. The conflict had become a brutal stalemate with heavy casualties on both sides. Standard military doctrine was failing. Rethavan was assigned to accompany David, Amy, and Robert to the front lines. They would deploy to a world called Tarsonis, where Coalition forces had been locked in trench warfare for 8 months. When he informed the humans of their deployment, they did not seem nervous. They seemed eager. David actually smiled. "Finally," he said. "Real combat." That single word finally told Rethavan everything he needed to know. Humans did not fear war. They had been waiting for it. The transport ship dropped into Tarsonis orbit and Rethavan got his first view of the battlefield below. Smoke rose from dozens of impact sites. Artillery fire lit up the darkness like storm lightning. The planet had once been a thriving agricultural world. Now it was a graveyard. General Horvath, the Coalition commander, met them at the landing zone. He was a Quilarian with 2 centuries of military experience and the exhausted look of someone who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. "Your timing is unfortunate," Horvath said bluntly. We are barely holding the line. I cannot spare resources to babysit experimental troops. We do not require babysitting, David replied calmly. Point us at the enemy. Horvath's eyes narrowed. The enemy is an insectoid hive mind with no fear and no concept of retreat. They attack in waves of thousands. We kill them by the hundreds and more replace them within hours. This is not academy training. This is real warfare at its ugliest. We understand, sir, Amy said. Horvath looked at Rethvan. Your report claimed these humans were highly effective. I hope you were correct. We need every advantage we can find. The forward base was a hastily constructed fortress of reinforced bunkers and defensive walls. Coalition soldiers from a dozen species manned the defenses, looking worn and jumpy. Rethvan saw the signs of prolonged combat stress everywhere. Trembling hands, hollow eyes, the careful movements of soldiers who had seen too many friends die. A Talaron sergeant named Karveth gave them a briefing. The hive attacks every night. Sometimes small probes, sometimes full assaults. We hold them off, but barely. Casualties are running 30% per month. At this rate, we will run out of soldiers before they run out of bugs. What is the standard defensive protocol? Robert asked. We man the walls. Artillery hits them as they approach. We shoot anything that gets close. When they breach the walls, we fall back to secondary positions and call for reinforcement. What about offensive operations? Karveth laughed bitterly. Offensive? We are just trying to survive. The hive territory extends for hundreds of kilometers. Attacking would be suicide. The three humans exchanged looks. Rethvan recognized that expression now. They were problem-solving. That night, the hive attacked as predicted. Thousands of insectoid creatures swarmed from the darkness, their chittering calls filling the air. Coalition artillery opened fire, blowing massive holes in their formation. It did not slow them down. More creatures poured forward, climbing over the bodies of the fallen. The defense line erupted with plasma fire. The hive reached the walls and began climbing. Coalition soldiers fired at point-blank range, but the creatures kept coming. Rethvan watched from the command bunker as sections of the wall were overrun. Soldiers fell back, fighting desperately. Then he saw the humans. They were not on the walls with everyone else. They were in the open ground beyond the defenses, moving through the hive swarm. David fired in controlled bursts, each shot dropping a creature. Amy moved with him, covering his angles. Robert was engaging in hand-to-hand combat, his weapon used as a club when enemies got too close. Get those humans back inside. Horvath shouted. They cannot hear you, sir, Rethvan said quietly, and I do not think they would listen if they could. The humans were not just fighting. They were hunting. They moved through the swarm, targeting the larger creatures that appeared to be directing the smaller ones. Each kill disrupted the hive's coordination. After 30 minutes, the attack broke apart into disorganized groups that were easily repelled. When the fighting ended, coalition casualties were listed at 43 wounded, 8 dead. Lower than usual, the three humans returned to base covered in hive ichor but uninjured. They were breathing hard but looked alert and focused. What were you thinking? Horvath demanded. You could have been killed. We were thinking that defensive warfare is inefficient, David replied. You let them choose when and where to attack. That gives them all the advantages. Then what do you suggest? Let us go on offense. Horvath stared at him. 3 soldiers against thousands of hive creatures? That is not offense, that is suicide. Not if we do it correctly, Amy said. Humans develop tactics for asymmetric warfare. Small units operating independently behind enemy lines, disrupting supply, eliminating command structures, creating chaos. The hive has no supply lines. They harvest resources locally. Then we target their harvesting operations. Make them hungry. Hungry enemies make mistakes. Horvath looked at Rethvan. Is this genuine tactical thinking or suicidal overconfidence? With humans, it is difficult to distinguish, Rethvan admitted, but their record suggests trusting their judgment. Against his better instincts, Horvath approved a limited operation. The humans would conduct a reconnaissance raid 2 kilometers into hive territory, observe enemy patterns, return before dawn, no heroics. The humans left at midnight carrying light weapons and minimal gear. Rethvan watched their transponder signals move into enemy territory. They traveled fast, avoiding hive patrols, staying below detection range. 3 hours later, Rethvan's monitor lit up with multiple alerts. Explosions deep in hive territory. The humans were not conducting reconnaissance. They were attacking. Horvath pulled up the tactical feed and swore in 3 different languages. The humans had found a hive breeding chamber and destroyed it. Thousands of hive young eliminated in minutes. The response was immediate. Every hive creature within kilometers converged on the location. "They are going to be overrun," Horvath said. "Prepare a rescue force." But the human transponders were already moving, running at full speed back toward friendly lines. The hive pursuit numbered in the thousands, a tide of chittering death. No way the humans could outrun them, except they did. The humans maintained their pace for over an hour, leading the hive directly into prepared coalition artillery positions. The trap was perfect. Thousands of hive creatures were caught in the open and annihilated. The few survivors retreated in disarray. The humans returned at dawn, exhausted but satisfied. "Reconnaissance complete," David reported. "Enemy capabilities assessed." "You destroyed a breeding chamber," Horvath said flatly. "Target of opportunity. Would have been wasteful to ignore it." Over the next 2 weeks, the humans conducted 7 more raids. Each time they penetrated deeper into hive territory. Each time, they destroyed critical infrastructure. Breeding chambers, resource processing nodes, what appeared to be command organisms. The hive attacks on coalition positions became less coordinated, more desperate. Other coalition soldiers began volunteering to accompany the humans. At first it was curiosity. Then it became respect. Then it became something else. The humans were winning. After 8 months of grinding attrition, coalition forces were finally advancing. Rethvan documented everything. The humans operated on minimal sleep, rotating rest schedules that kept at least one of them alert at all times. They moved through hostile territory with confidence that came from thousands of years of human hunter experience. They killed efficiently without hesitation or remorse, then returned to base and joked with other soldiers like nothing had happened. But the most remarkable thing was their effect on morale. Coalition soldiers who had been ready to give up started volunteering for missions. Units that had been purely defensive began conducting their own raids. The humans had not just changed tactics, they had changed the entire psychological dynamic of the war. General Horvath pulled Rethvan aside after 3 weeks. "I need to know. How many more like them does Earth have?" "Millions," Rethvan replied honestly. "These 3 are average by Earth standards." "Average?" Horvath looked stunned. "If this is average, what are their elite soldiers capable of?" "I do not want to find out," Rethvan admitted. "And I hope the galaxy never needs to." The breakthrough came in the 5th week. The humans located the primary hive queen, buried 3 kilometers underground in a complex cave system. Standard military doctrine would call for orbital bombardment or heavy ground assault. Both would result in massive casualties. The humans volunteered to go in alone. "Absolutely not," Horvath said. "I will not send 3 soldiers on a suicide mission." "It is only suicide if we fail," Robert pointed out. "And if you do fail, I lose my 3 most effective operators. If we fail, the war continues for months with thousands more casualties," Amy countered. "If we succeed, the hive loses coordination and the war ends. The mathematics are clear." Horvath looked at Rethvan. "Your opinion?" Rethvan thought about everything he had learned about humans. Their persistence, their tactical creativity, their absolute refusal to quit. If humans believe they can accomplish a mission, they usually can. "I recommend approval." The mission launched at midnight. The humans descended into the cave system armed with only light weapons and explosives. Rethvan monitored their progress through helmet cameras. The tunnels were tight, dark, and filled with hive defenders. The humans moved through it all like they had been born underground. They fought through swarms of smaller creatures. They avoided the larger warriors when possible, killed them when necessary. They pushed deeper, always deeper, following cave markers toward the Queen's chamber. 12 hours into the mission, their comms went silent. Rethvan stared at the last known position marker, his heart's pounding. They were too deep, too far from support. If they had been overwhelmed, there was nothing anyone could do. Then, 18 hours into the mission, the Earth shook. A massive underground explosion registered on seismic monitors. The hive territory erupted in chaos. Creatures ran in all directions, no longer coordinated, no longer organized. The hive mind had been severed. 3 hours later, the humans emerged from a cave entrance 5 kilometers from their entry point. They were covered in injuries, exhausted beyond any reasonable limit, but alive. David carried a section of the Queen's carapace as proof of mission success. Coalition forces advanced and met almost no resistance. The hive creatures fought as individuals now, confused and disorganized. Within 3 days, Tarsonis was secured. An 8-month stalemate broken by 3 humans in a single mission. The victory celebration was muted. Too many soldiers had died to feel triumphant, but there was relief. The killing was over. Rethvan found the humans sitting together away from the main gathering. They looked hollow, processing what they had done. Robert was shaking, adrenaline finally wearing off. Amy stared at nothing, her eyes distant. David was the only one who noticed Rethvan approach. "We did what was necessary," David said quietly, "but that does not make it easy." "You saved thousands of lives," Rethvan replied. "We took thousands of lives too." The hive creatures were just following their biology. They did not choose to be enemies. "But we killed them anyway because that was the mission." Rethvan sat down beside them. "This is why other species fear humans. Not because you are cruel, but because you are capable. You can do terrible things when necessary, and then carry the weight of those actions afterward." "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" Amy asked. "It is an observation. Most species cannot separate duty from emotion. They either refuse to kill and fail their mission, or they kill without feeling and become monsters. Humans do both. You kill when necessary, then feel the appropriate guilt afterward. It is a remarkable and terrifying balance." Over the next days, Rethvan compiled his final combat assessment. The data was overwhelming. 3 humans had eliminated over 2,000 enemy combatants. They had conducted successful operations that Coalition forces considered impossible. They had changed the outcome of an entire war. The report included casualty statistics that would shock Coalition command. In standard operations, Coalition soldiers averaged 1 confirmed kill per month of combat. The humans averaged 23 kills per day. The efficiency difference was not marginal. It was exponential. But numbers alone did not capture the full picture. Rethvan included psychological assessments, tactical analysis, and cultural observations. He described how humans approached warfare not as politics or philosophy, but as problem-solving through violence. How they could be gentle and compassionate off the battlefield, then utterly ruthless during combat. His conclusion was carefully worded but honest. Humans represented the most effective military force ever observed in Coalition history. Deploying them in combat operations would save Coalition lives and shorten conflict significantly. But integrating humans into the military structure would require accepting that they approached warfare differently than any other species. The question was whether the Coalition was ready for that truth. The Coalition High Council chamber had been built to inspire awe. Representatives from 47 species sat in ascending circles, creating an amphitheater of political power. Rethvan stood at the center, his completed report displayed on screens throughout the chamber. 500 pages of analysis, combat footage, statistical data, and conclusions that would reshape galactic military doctrine forever. He had been speaking for 2 hours, presenting findings that grew more controversial with each slide. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversation, translator devices creating a symphony of different languages all expressing the same sentiment. Fear, Representative Kelthar of Praxis Prime stood. His species had been Coalition members for 12,000 years and considered themselves the senior political voice. "Instructor Rethvan, your report suggests humans represent an existential shift in military capability. Some might say an existential threat. How do you respond?" Rethvan chose his words carefully. 4 centuries of military service had taught him that politics required different tactics than warfare. Humans are not a threat unless they are treated as enemies. They joined the Coalition seeking partnership. What they offer is capability. What they ask for is respect. Respect? Another representative, this one from Volthir, spoke sharply. "Your report documents humans eliminating thousands of hive creatures with minimal casualties. You describe tactical doctrines refined through constant warfare. You note that the 3 humans you studied are average by Earth standards. How can we not see this as threatening? Because being capable of violence is not the same as being violent," Rethvan replied. "Every species in this chamber possesses weapons that could devastate worlds. We trust each other not to use them because we share common values. Humans share those same values." Representative Sethis from the Kolarian delegation gestured for attention. "I have read your report thoroughly. You document human effectiveness, but you also note concerning psychological traits. Humans can compartmentalize violence. They can kill in the morning and display compassion in the afternoon. This suggests a dangerous duality. It suggests evolution on a harsh world, Rethvan countered. Humans learn to be protective of their own while being dangerous to threats. This is not duality. It is context-dependent behavior. We all exhibit this to some degree. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued for restricting human military service. Others suggested creating special oversight committees. A few extremists even proposed revoking Earth's coalition membership entirely. Then the doors opened and someone unexpected entered. General Patricia Hayes, Earth's senior military representative, walked to the center floor. She had not been scheduled to speak, but coalition protocol allowed any member species to address the council during relevant debates. I have listened to this discussion with great interest, Hayes began, her voice calm but carrying authority. You debate what to do about human military capability, as if we are a problem to be solved. I would like to offer a different perspective. The chamber quieted. Hayes was a decorated veteran of Earth's unification wars, someone who had commanded forces before humans ever left their solar system. Her presence demanded attention. Earth sought coalition membership because we believed in your values, Hayes continued. Peace through cooperation, shared prosperity, mutual defense. We did not join because we needed protection. We joined because we wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. She activated her own data display, showing statistics that made several representatives shift uncomfortably. Earth maintains military forces of 250 million active personnel. Another 500 million reserves. We have defensive installations on 32 planets and moons in our system. We possess weapons technology that we have not shared with the coalition because you never asked. Murmurs spread through the chamber. These numbers far exceeded what coalition intelligence had estimated. The 3 humans you are discussing, the ones who changed the outcome of a war, Hayes continued, are junior instructors from our basic training cadre. We sent them to your academy so they could learn about other species, not because we needed your training. The skills they demonstrated are taught to every human soldier during their first year of service. Representative Kelthor stood again. If Earth possesses such extensive military capability, why has this been hidden? It has not been hidden. You never asked. Humans assumed other species maintained similar defensive forces. When we realized the coalition's military was relatively small, we chose not to advertise our own strength. We did not want to appear threatening. Yet you are threatening us now, someone called out. No, Hayes said firmly. I am providing context. You are debating whether to restrict human military service based on incomplete information. You need to understand what Earth actually offers. She changed the display to show combat footage from Tarsonis, the 3 humans moving through Hive territory, executing tactics that seemed impossible to coalition observers. This is what average human soldiers can accomplish. Now let me show you what our special operations forces can do. The new footage showed an operation that made the Tarsonis mission look cautious. Earth's special forces moving through terrain that should have been impassable, eliminating targets with such precision that coalition military analysts in the chamber audibly gasped. These were not the clumsy, aggressive tactics of amateurs. This was warfare refined to an art form. Earth possesses 12,000 special operations soldiers, Hayes said quietly. Each one trains for 7 years before deployment. They are experts in every form of combat humanity has ever developed. Orbital insertion, deep space operations, urban warfare, wilderness survival, underwater combat, zero-gravity assault. These soldiers can operate independently for months behind enemy lines. The chamber was absolutely silent now. I show you this not to intimidate, Hayes continued, but to make clear what you are actually debating. The question is not whether humans are dangerous, we are. The question is whether you want that danger working for the coalition or sitting idle on Earth. She turned to face the full council. Humans have been at war with ourselves for our entire history. We have killed each other with sticks, swords, guns, bombs, and weapons that could poison entire continents. We have fought over everything imaginable and learned every possible lesson about combat. This is our history and we cannot change it. But we can choose what we do with that history, she said. We can use our experience to help defend coalition members. We can train your soldiers in tactics that will keep them alive. We can stand between you and any threat that emerges. Or we can return to Earth and maintain our own defense while you face future conflicts without us. Representative Kelthar spoke slowly. You are saying Earth would leave the coalition if we restrict human military service? I am saying that humans joined the coalition as equals. If we are treated as dangerous children who must be controlled, then we are not equals. We are subordinates. That is not what we agreed to. Rethvan found himself impressed. Hayes was not making threats. She was stating facts. Earth did not need the coalition for protection. The coalition needed Earth for military capability. This shifted the entire political calculation. A new voice spoke. Representative Althir from the Kendari delegation, a species known for pragmatic thinking. General Hayes, hypothetically, if war came to the coalition on a massive scale, what could Earth contribute? Hayes paused, seeming to calculate. Full military mobilization? We could deploy 2 billion soldiers within 6 months. 20,000 warships, enough firepower to overwhelm any known hostile force in the galaxy. 2 billion soldiers. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. The entire coalition military numbered 40 million across all species. Earth alone could produce 50 times that force. Of course, we would never mobilize that completely, Hayes added. Such action would require existential threat to Earth or the coalition. But the capability exists. Representative Sethis asked the question everyone was thinking. If Earth possesses this capability, why join the coalition at all? You could dominate this region of space independently. Because humans learned something from our history of warfare, Hayes replied. We learned that conquest is temporary. Alliances are permanent. We learned that the strongest military in the world means nothing if you have no friends. We learned that peace is better than victory. She gestured to Rethvan. This instructor spent months studying 3 humans. He documented our effectiveness in combat. But I hope he also documented our values. We protect our allies. We keep our word. We value life even as we become very good at ending it. These are not contradictions. These are the lessons Earth learned through blood. Rethvan stepped forward. General Hayes is correct. My report focused on military capability because that was my assignment. But I also observed humans forming friendships with other species. I saw them risk their lives to save coalition soldiers. I watched them cry over enemies they killed. Humans are dangerous, but they are not evil. The debate shifted after that. No longer about restricting humans, but about how to integrate them properly, how to maintain coalition principles while utilizing human military advantages, how to ensure no single species dominated while acknowledging that some species were more effective at certain tasks. Hours later, the Council reached a decision. Humans would receive official recognition as a Tier 1 military species, the highest classification in coalition structure. Earth would be invited to establish training programs for other species. Human soldiers would be integrated into coalition forces at all levels. In exchange, Earth agreed to limit deployment to 10% of its total military capability unless existential threat required more. 10%. That was still 25 million soldiers. More than half the entire coalition military. After the session ended, Rethvan found himself walking with Hayes through the council complex gardens. You planned this, he observed. Everything from deploying those 3 humans to my investigation. You wanted the coalition to see what humans could do. Hayes smiled slightly. Not exactly. We genuinely wanted those 3 to learn about other species. But when you requested them for combat deployment, we saw an opportunity. Better to reveal our capability in a controlled way than have it discovered during a crisis. You took a significant risk. The Council could have rejected Earth's membership. They could have. But humans have learned to calculate odds. The coalition faces threats on multiple borders. You have hostile species testing your defenses. You have pirates that standard military doctrine cannot eliminate. You needed us more than we needed you. We just helped you realize that. They reached a viewing platform overlooking the Council complex. Thousands of beings from dozens of species moved through the plaza below, living and working together peacefully. This is why we joined, Hayes said softly, not for military alliances or strategic advantage. Because this is what Earth wants to become, a place where different peoples coexist peacefully. We have been fighting ourselves for so long. Maybe by helping defend others we can finally stop fighting. Rethvan understood. Humans were not joining the coalition despite their warrior nature. They were joining because of it. They needed a purpose for their military capability beyond fighting each other. Over the following months, Human integration into coalition military structures proceeded rapidly. Training programs were established. Mixed units were formed. Human tactical doctrines were studied and adapted. The results exceeded all expectations. Coalition casualties dropped 40% in active conflict zones. Mission success rates increased dramatically. Enemy forces that had been aggressive began avoiding confrontation with coalition units, knowing humans might be present. Rethvan took on a new role as liaison between human forces and coalition command. He trained new instructors on how to work with humans, explaining their psychology, their tactics, their values. He became the bridge between two very different military cultures. David, Amy, and Robert were promoted to training positions, teaching other humans and coalition soldiers advanced combat techniques. They remained humble despite their fame, insisting they were nothing special. 5 years after his initial report, Rethvan compiled a final assessment. The document was shorter than the original, just 20 pages. But its impact would last generations. He titled it simply, The Human Integration, Success and Implications. The conclusion was clear. Humans had not dominated coalition military structure through force. They had integrated through competence, earning respect rather than demanding it. They trained others rather than replacing them. They protected weaker species rather than exploiting them. But the report included one classified section, accessible only to senior coalition leadership. In it, Rethvan noted something that should concern every strategic thinker in the galaxy. Humans were still holding back. The soldiers they deployed were competent but not exceptional by Earth standards. Their special forces remained on Earth training quietly. Their most advanced weapons technology remained classified. Their full military doctrine had not been shared. Earth was showing the coalition what it wanted them to see. A capable ally, a reliable partner, a species that could be trusted with military responsibility. But underneath that careful presentation was a war machine refined over thousands of years of constant conflict. Rethvan wrote in his final entry, "We asked humans to join us, believing we were offering them protection and opportunity. We were correct about the opportunity. We were wrong about the protection. Humans did not need us to defend them. We needed them to defend us. The question now is not what humans will become in the coalition. The question is what the coalition will become with humans as members." He paused, then added one final line. "I have spent 5 years studying humanity's military capability. I have documented their tactics, analyzed their psychology, and observed their effectiveness. After all this research, I have reached one undeniable conclusion. We are very fortunate that humans chose to be our friends." The report was filed, sealed, and distributed to coalition leadership. The era of human military integration had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Years later, when hostile forces tested the coalition's borders, they learned the truth that Rethvan had documented. Human soldiers fought with efficiency that seemed impossible. They adapted to any environment. They never quit, never retreated, never surrendered. The predators of the galaxy, species that had dominated their regions through strength and aggression, discovered something unexpected. Earth had produced an apex predator that hunted not from instinct but from choice, and humans had chosen to hunt on behalf of their friends. The kill count records that Rethvan had maintained for centuries, documenting the effectiveness of coalition soldiers, were rewritten. Human soldiers did not just exceed previous records. They shattered them. The numbers climbed so high that Coalition Command eventually stopped publishing them, fearing they would discourage other species from military service. But Rethvan kept his own private records, not to glorify violence but to remember an important truth. The universe was a dangerous place. Peace required strength, and sometimes the strongest warriors were those who understood the true cost of warfare. In his final log entry before retirement, Rethvan wrote, "I began this study asking what humans would bring to coalition military service. Now, after years of observation, I know the answer. They brought something we had forgotten. They brought the will to fight for what matters. Not for territory or resources or pride, but for each other. In doing so, they reminded us why we formed the coalition in the first place, not to avoid conflict, but to have something worth defending." He closed the log and looked out at the training grounds one final time. Human and coalition soldiers trained together, learning from each other, building friendships that crossed species boundaries. This was the future he had helped create. Not humans dominating others, but humans elevating everyone. The galaxy had gained its most effective military force, but more importantly, it had gained allies who understood that true strength was not just the ability to destroy enemies, but the wisdom to know when violence was necessary and when it was not. Rethavan had spent 4 centuries studying warfare. In the end, 3 humans from a death world taught him the most important lesson of all. The most dangerous warriors were not those who loved fighting, but those who fought because they loved something worth protecting. And humans, it turned out, had found something worth protecting in the Coalition. That made them more dangerous to the Coalition's enemies than any weapon ever created. The kill count records would continue long after Rethavan's retirement. New instructors would document new battles, new tactics, new achievements, but none would forget the instructor who first recognized what humanity truly represented. Not a threat to be contained, not a problem to be solved, but an answer to a question the Coalition had been asking for centuries. How do you maintain peace in a dangerous galaxy? The answer, as it turned out, was simple. You make friends with the most dangerous species in that galaxy, and you never give them reason to become your enemy. Rethavan smiled as he walked away from the academy for the last time. Somewhere out there, David, Amy, and Robert were still serving, still protecting, still proving that humans belonged among the stars. Not as conquerors or dominators, but as guardians. The galaxy had finally met Earth's true nature, and against all expectations, it had not ended in conquest or fear. It had ended in partnership. That, Rethavan thought, was perhaps humanity's greatest victory. Not winning wars, but winning trust. The kill count records would show their military effectiveness. But history would remember something more important. When humans gained the power to dominate, they chose instead to serve, and that choice made all the difference.